The sound of Commander William Hayes's forearm snapping echoed across Fort Morrison's Precision Range Alpha like a gunshot itself, but it was nothing compared to the 12 consecutive bullseyes that followed. Each shot landed dead center, the impacts so perfectly grouped that even the electronic scoring system seemed to pause in disbelief. The same woman they'd relegated to cleaning rifle barrels and cataloging ammunition had just demonstrated marksmanship that defied everything the military establishment thought they knew about talent, capability, and the price of underestimating the wrong person. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Jessica Carter stood over the groaning commander, her service pistol still smoking in her steady grip. 12 perfect holes punched through the target at distances that would challenge Olympic shooters. The assembled officers, trainers, and enlisted personnel watched in stunned silence as the woman they'd dismissed as washed up and broken methodically proved that competence doesn't disappear just because paperwork says it should. But this moment of reckoning had been 3 years in the making, built on a foundation of institutional blindness so profound that it had transformed one of the military's most gifted marksmen into a forgotten ghost haunting the shadows of Fort Morrison. What they were witnessing wasn't just exceptional shooting, it was the explosive release of talent that had been compressed, ignored, and buried beneath layers of bureaucratic indifference until pressure finally shattered the container meant to hold it. The morning mist clung to the Colorado foothills like smoke from yesterday's battles as Jessica Carter descended the concrete steps to Fort Morrison's equipment storage facility, her boots creating the same rhythmic echo they'd made every morning for the past 36 months. The heavy steel door groaned on its hinges as she unlocked it, revealing rows upon rows of precision rifles that whispered silent accusations with every glance. These weren't just weapons, they were extensions of a life she'd been forbidden to live. Tools of a trade she'd mastered but was no longer allowed to practice. The irony cut deeper each morning as she meticulously cleaned and maintained instruments that had once felt like natural extensions of her nervous system. Her fingers moved across bolt actions and trigger assemblies with the fluid expertise of someone conducting a symphony, every component checked with obsessive precision that exceeded military standards by margins that would have impressed weapons engineers at higher command levels. But nobody watched these daily rituals of excellence. Nobody documented the countless hours of unpaid overtime she invested in ensuring that every rifle under her care achieved peak performance capabilities. Jessica understood the mechanical heartbeat of every weapon in the facility better than most soldiers understood their own pulse rates. She could diagnose malfunctions that other armorers missed, identify wear patterns that predicted failures before they occurred, and optimize performance through adjustments so subtle they bordered on artistry. Her maintenance logs read like technical dissertations documenting microscopic variations in barrel harmonics and component tolerances with scientific rigor that belonged in advanced engineering journals rather than routine military paperwork. The Barrett rifles received her most devoted attention, their precision-machined components responding to her touch with mechanical sympathy that transcended mere technical knowledge. She'd field-stripped and reassembled these weapons so many times that she could perform the procedures blindfolded, her muscle memory guided by an intimate understanding of how each piece contributed to the deadly accuracy that made these systems legendary among precision shooters worldwide. Every morning she'd run her fingers along their barrels like a pianist checking keys before a concert, feeling for imperfections that might compromise the mathematical perfection required for shots at distances exceeding 1,000 meters. Through the facility's single small window, Jessica could observe Fort Morrison coming alive with training activities that had once defined her existence but now proceeded without her participation. The Advanced Marksmanship Training Center occupied the hill's crest, its state-of-the-art facilities gleaming in the morning sun like a monument to everything she'd been denied. From her basement exile she could hear the distant crack of rifle fire as supposedly elite shooters practiced techniques she'd mastered years before most of them had ever held a precision rifle. The sounds carried on the thin mountain air with crystalline clarity, each shot analyzed automatically by ears trained to distinguish between competent marksmanship and exceptional accuracy. She could identify individual shooters by their firing rhythms, recognize when someone was struggling with wind compensation, and predict which students would wash out of advanced training programs based solely on the acoustic signatures of their shooting sessions. This involuntary analysis had become a form of torture, forcing her to witness daily evidence of mediocrity being celebrated while excellence remained buried in paperwork and institutional indifference. Sergeant David Mitchell supervised the current advanced marksmanship program with the confident swagger of someone who'd never faced the moral complexities that had destroyed Jessica's career. His credentials were solid but unremarkable, earned through peacetime training exercises and controlled range environments rather than the chaotic realities of combat operations where split-second decisions carried life and death consequences. Mitchell possessed adequate technical knowledge but lacked the intuitive understanding that separated true precision shooters from merely competent ones. The culture at Fort Morrison's training facilities reflected broader military tendencies to compartmentalize personnel based on current assignments rather than demonstrated capabilities. Jessica's relegation to equipment maintenance had effectively erased her combat record from institutional memory, transforming her from decorated veteran to anonymous support staff in the minds of officers who'd never served alongside her in operational environments. Her presence had become so routine that most personnel forgot she'd ever been anything other than the quiet woman who kept their weapons functioning properly. Lieutenant Emma Roberts represented one of the few exceptions to this institutional amnesia, having arrived at Fort Morrison with enough combat experience to recognize genuine expertise when she encountered it. Roberts had served 2 tours in Iraq as an infantry officer, giving her the battlefield perspective necessary to distinguish between theoretical knowledge and practical competence. She'd witnessed Jessica's technical abilities firsthand during weapons maintenance sessions and suspected that her current assignment represented a massive waste of talent, but military protocol prevented her from advocating for personnel outside her direct chain of command. The daily routine that governed Jessica's existence had become a carefully choreographed dance of professional competence performed for an audience that refused to acknowledge the artistry involved. She arrived 30 minutes before the official duty day began, conducting inventory checks and system diagnostics that ensured training operations could proceed without equipment failures or safety hazards. Her work prevented countless malfunctions and maintained readiness standards that kept Fort Morrison's reputation intact. But these contributions were viewed as routine job performance rather than exceptional dedication that merited recognition or advancement opportunities. During lunch breaks, Jessica would retreat to a secluded corner of the base where Pikes Peak dominated the western horizon, its snow-capped summit serving as a natural shooting backdrop that triggered involuntary ballistics calculations. She'd estimate ranges to various landmarks, calculate wind drift adjustments for different altitudes, and visualize engagement solutions for hypothetical scenarios that kept her tactical awareness sharp despite having no authorized opportunities to employ these skills. The mountains held memories of training exercises.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Exercises and qualification courses where she'd established records that still stood unchallenged in Fort Morrison's archives. The Advanced Marksmanship Training Center's daily schedules were posted throughout the base, allowing Jessica to track training activities and mentally participate in exercises she wasn't permitted to attend. She knew their curriculum better than most instructors, having memorized technical specifications and performance standards for every weapon system employed during training rotations. Her theoretical knowledge had expanded during her years of forced exile, incorporating advances in ballistics technology and shooting techniques that she studied through professional publications purchased with her own money. The personal equipment locked in Jessica's quarters represented months of salary invested in maintaining combat readiness despite having no official authorization to employ these capabilities. Her civilian rifle case contained a precision system that exceeded military specifications in every measurable category, equipped with optics and accessories that reflected careful research and uncompromising attention to performance optimization. Every component had been selected for maximum effectiveness, creating a weapon platform that could deliver accuracy at distances that challenged the limitations of physics itself. Evening hours found Jessica practicing marksmanship fundamentals in the privacy of her quarters, using visualization techniques and muscle memory exercises to maintain the neurological pathways that enabled extraordinary shooting performance. She'd stand before a mirror, perfecting breathing techniques and trigger control methods that had made her legendary among special operations units during her previous assignments. These mental rehearsals kept her skills sharp through 18 months of forced inactivity, preserving capabilities that transcended administrative punishment and bureaucratic indifference. The psychological discipline required for precision shooting had been maintained through meditation and focus exercises that Jessica practiced during her limited free time. She understood that marksmanship excellence demanded mental clarity, emotional control, and the ability to maintain concentration under extreme stress conditions. These psychological skills had been honed through combat experience but preserved through deliberate practice that kept her mind as sharp as her technical knowledge, preparing for opportunities that might never come. Fort Morrison's geographical setting provided unique training challenges that Jessica had mastered through years of study and observation. The high-altitude environment affected ballistics calculations in ways that confused shooters trained at sea level, while mountain weather patterns created wind conditions that challenged even experienced marksmen. Her understanding of these environmental factors had deepened through constant observation and analysis, creating expertise that surpassed most active duty personnel, who actually worked in precision shooting roles. The weapons technology available at Fort Morrison included some of the most advanced rifle systems in military inventory, instruments that Jessica could have employed with devastating effectiveness if given the opportunity. Instead, these tools remained assigned to shooters whose technical competence was adequate but unremarkable, while the most qualified person on the base maintained their barrels and calibrated their scopes. The daily reminder of this institutional failure had become a source of both frustration and motivation, fueling her determination to remain ready for whatever opportunity might eventually arise. Commander William Hayes represented the pinnacle of military bureaucracy's ability to mistake political awareness for operational competence. His career had been built on steady advancement through administrative positions that required minimal tactical knowledge but maximum institutional loyalty. Hayes had inherited Jessica's situation from his predecessor and chosen to maintain the status quo rather than reopening personnel decisions that had already been processed through proper channels. His leadership philosophy prioritized avoiding complications over maximizing organizational effectiveness. The Advanced Marksmanship Training Center operated under Hayes's overall command, but his understanding of precision shooting barely extended beyond reading performance statistics and attendance reports. He viewed the facility as a necessary component of Fort Morrison's training mission rather than a critical capability that required nurturing and expert oversight. His interactions with training personnel remained limited to formal briefings and ceremonial functions, preventing him from developing appreciation for the technical complexities involved in advanced marksmanship instruction. Captain Marcus Thompson's influence extended far beyond his current assignment at Joint Special Operations Command Headquarters in Tampa, Florida. His network of allies and protégés throughout the special operations community had effectively blacklisted Jessica from any position that might allow her to demonstrate the skills that had once made her invaluable to elite military units. Thompson understood that acknowledging his intelligence failure during Operation Desert Storm 2 would require admitting that a staff sergeant had shown better judgment than a field-grade officer, an admission that would damage more than just his personal reputation. The institutional memory of Fort Morrison contained fragments of Jessica's story, preserved in unofficial channels and whispered conversations between personnel who'd served long enough to remember her initial assignment and the circumstances surrounding her professional exile. Senior non-commissioned officers recalled her arrival and had quietly monitored her performance through informal observation, but military protocol required them to respect decisions made by previous commanders, unless presented with compelling evidence of administrative error. Colonel Patricia Williams had served as Fort Morrison's commander for 2 years, making her one of the few people with sufficient authority to challenge personnel decisions if she chose to exercise that influence. Williams remembered Jessica's reputation and had occasionally wondered about the wisdom of assigning someone with advanced marksmanship qualifications to equipment maintenance duties. But the complexities of military bureaucracy discouraged reopening cases that had been officially resolved through proper channels. Her leadership style emphasized stability and avoiding unnecessary controversies that might reflect poorly on her command effectiveness. The training facilities at Fort Morrison stretched across several thousand acres of Colorado mountain terrain, providing diverse environmental conditions that challenged even experienced shooters. Jessica had memorized every elevation change, wind pattern and sight line across these ranges during her initial assignment, knowledge that remained unused while supposedly elite marksmen struggled with conditions she could have navigated effortlessly. Her understanding of local ballistics conditions exceeded that of most instructional staff, representing institutional knowledge that was being completely wasted through administrative oversight. The bureaucratic machinery that governed military assignments operated through multiple layers of review and approval, creating systems where individual cases could become lost in procedural complexity. Jessica's situation had been documented, filed, and archived according to proper regulations, making it administratively invisible, unless someone with sufficient authority chose to reopen her case for reconsideration. The political networks that influenced assignments operated through informal channels that bypassed official review processes, ensuring that certain personnel remained untouchable, despite their qualifications or performance records. Daily life at Fort Morrison continued with mechanical efficiency, while extraordinary talent remained hidden in plain sight. Jessica's reputation reduced to half-remembered stories and archived performance reports that few people bothered to examine. The woman who had once set marksmanship records that still stood unchallenged had become invisible within the very institution that should have celebrated her capabilities. Her skills lay dormant like a precision instrument locked in storage, maintained in perfect condition but forbidden from fulfilling its intended purpose. The morning routine that would shatter 3 years of institutional indifference began like any other, with Jessica arriving early to conduct equipment checks and inventory management that kept Fort Morrison's training operations functioning smoothly. Her methodical preparation and professional dedication had become so routine that nobody noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor, the way her movements carried slightly more tension, or how her eyes lingered longer on certain rifle systems as if calculating possibilities that had nothing to do with routine maintenance procedures. The convergence of circumstances that would finally provide Jessica with an opportunity to demonstrate her exceptional capabilities was building like a mountain storm, invisible to those who'd grown comfortable with the status quo but devastating in its potential to reshape everything they thought they understood about talent, justice, and the price of bureaucratic blindness. The woman they'd buried in basement storage was about to remind everyone why competence transcends politics and why exceptional individuals eventually find ways to prove that institutional indifference cannot erase abilities that were forged in combat and refined through years of dedicated preparation. Part 2: The Origin of Injustice. The desert heat shimmered across the abandoned marketplace in Fallbrook Province like liquid glass, distorting the air above crumbling concrete buildings that bore the scars of 15 years of intermittent warfare. Staff Sergeant Jessica Carter adjusted her position on the rooftop overlooking the target compound, her Barrett M82 rifle resting on its bipod with mathematical precision. The morning sun cast harsh shadows that provided perfect concealment while offering unobstructed sight lines to the intelligence objective 300 meters across the dusty plaza. Operation Desert Storm 2 had been grinding through its 8th month when Jessica received orders for what military planners designated as a routine high-value target elimination mission. Captain Marcus Thompson coordinated the operation from Forward Operating Base Apache, his voice crackling through encrypted communications with the casual authority of someone who'd built his reputation on successful mission completions. Intelligence briefings identified the target location as a weapons cache and command center used by insurgent forces to coordinate attacks against coalition convoys traveling Highway 7, the critical supply route linking major population centers throughout the region. Jessica had been operating in Fallbrook Province for 6 months as part of Special Operations Task Force Phoenix, establishing herself as one of the most reliable precision shooters in theater. Her confirmed elimination count stood at 43 enemy combatants, each engagement documented with the clinical precision required by rules of engagement protocols that governed lethal force authorization in counterinsurgency environments. She'd never missed a designated target, never caused unintended casualties, and never failed to provide accurate battlefield intelligence from her overwatch positions during complex operations. The target building squatted in the marketplace's eastern corner, its flat roof and reinforced walls suggesting construction designed to withstand small arms fire and explosive devices. Military intelligence had identified the structure as a fortified position where senior insurgent leaders conducted planning sessions and stored advanced weaponry smuggled across international borders. Surveillance photographs supposedly confirmed the presence of high-value personnel whose elimination would significantly disrupt enemy operations throughout the province. Through her rifle scope, Jessica conducted the systematic observation protocols that had kept her alive through dozens of similar missions across multiple deployments. She cataloged architectural features, movement patterns, and environmental factors that might influence engagement parameters. Her training emphasizing direct observation over intelligence briefings that filtered information through multiple bureaucratic layers before reaching operational personnel. Ground truth often contradicted official reports, requiring shooters to trust their own assessments when making split-second decisions that carried life and death consequences. The first discrepancy emerged within minutes of establishing her firing position. Intelligence materials described the compound as a heavily fortified insurgent stronghold with minimal civilian activity, but Jessica observed clear indicators of domestic occupation that contradicted the official target description. Children's toys scattered across the courtyard, laundry hanging from improvised lines between buildings, and cooking smoke rising from chimney vents suggested family habitation rather than military operations. Corporal Jake Sullivan served as Jessica's spotter, his rangefinder and environmental monitoring equipment providing technical support for precision engagements at extended distances. Sullivan had worked with Jessica on 14 previous missions, developing professional trust built on her consistent accuracy and tactical judgment under combat conditions. His role involved confirming target identification, monitoring environmental conditions, and maintaining communications with command elements coordinating the broader operation. "Sullivan, are you seeing what I'm documenting?" Jessica asked through their tactical headset, adjusting her scope's magnification to examine the compound more closely. Civilian indicators, domestic activity patterns, family occupation signs. This doesn't match our intelligence picture at all. Her spotter consulted his briefing materials, comparing Jessica's observations with the official target description that had triggered the elimination mission. "Intelligence confirms this as an insurgent command post with weapons storage capabilities," Sullivan replied, reviewing photographs and signal intercepts that supposedly verified enemy presence at the location. Multiple sources corroborate hostile activity, confirmed through surveillance assets and human intelligence networks operating throughout the region. Jessica continued her methodical observation, documenting details that increasingly contradicted their operational briefing materials. An elderly woman emerged from the main building carrying a water pitcher, her movements displaying the routine familiarity of someone performing daily household tasks rather than the cautious behavior expected from occupants of a terrorist facility. Children's voices echoed from within the courtyard, their laughter carrying across the marketplace with innocent spontaneity that combat veterans learned to distinguish from adult conversations. Through her scope, Jessica watched a middle-aged man exit the compound carrying a wooden crate filled with vegetables, his clothing and
demeanor consistent with local merchants preparing for market activities. His movements were relaxed and purposeful, suggesting someone engaged in legitimate commercial activities rather than the furtive behavior associated with insurgent operations. The man's interaction with family members displayed natural affection and casual conversation that seemed incompatible with terrorist command structures. "Control, this is Overwatch 6, Jessica transmitted through the encrypted frequency connecting her position with Thompson's command center. "I need to report possible discrepancies in target identification, requesting extended observation period for additional intelligence verification before engagement authorization." Thompson's response came immediately, his voice carrying the impatience of someone focused on mission completion rather than tactical complexities that might interfere with predetermined operational timelines. "Overwatch 6, your observation window is limited by security considerations and operational scheduling. Target identification has been confirmed through multiple intelligence sources. Prepare for engagement on my authorization." The radio silence that followed Jessica's report stretched for nearly 3 minutes, broken only by atmospheric static and the distant sound of helicopters conducting routine patrols in adjacent sectors. When Thompson's voice returned, it carried the cold authority of someone who'd made his decision regardless of conflicting information provided by personnel with ground-level perspective. Overwatch 6. Intelligence verification has been completed through proper channels, Thompson announced, his tone suggesting that further discussion was unwelcome. Your mission parameters remain unchanged. Target elimination will proceed according to established timeline. Maintain position and await final engagement authorization. Jessica had faced similar situations during previous deployments, moments when battlefield observations contradicted higher-level intelligence assessments that formed the basis for operational planning. Military doctrine emphasized the importance of following orders while simultaneously requiring personnel to report information that might affect mission success or prevent civilian casualties. The tension between obedience and professional judgment created ethical dilemmas that defined the difference between adequate soldiers and exceptional ones. Through her rifle scope, Jessica observed a young girl, perhaps 8 years old, emerge from the target building carrying schoolbooks and walking toward the marketplace's northern exit. The child's movements were unhurried and confident, displaying the behavior patterns of someone following familiar routines rather than fleeing from military operations. Her presence confirmed Jessica's growing suspicion that intelligence assessments had fundamentally mischaracterized the target location. Sullivan, I count at least 5 family members including elderly and children, Jessica reported to her spotter, who had been monitoring radio communications between various elements participating in the coordinated operation. This is appearing more like a civilian residence than an insurgent command post. The weapons cache intelligence doesn't match observable activity patterns. Her spotter understood the operational pressures driving military decision-making in counterinsurgency environments. Extended observation periods increased the risk of mission compromise, while delayed action allowed genuine targets to escape or reinforce their positions. However, his combat experience had taught him that hasty decisions based on flawed intelligence created far greater risks than tactical patience based on accurate ground truth. Control, this is Overwatch 6. Jessica transmitted with increasing urgency as her observations continued contradicting official intelligence assessments. I strongly recommend mission abort pending intelligence verification. Observable indicators suggest civilian family compound inconsistent with enemy command post operations. Request immediate consultation with intelligence personnel. Thompson's response carried barely contained anger at Jessica's continued resistance to his operational authority. The mission timeline had been established through coordination with multiple command levels, requiring precise synchronization between various operational elements deployed throughout the province. Delays threatened to compromise other missions while creating security risks for personnel maintaining positions under hostile observation. Overwatch 6. You are exceeding your mission parameters and questioning intelligence that has been verified through proper channels, Thompson replied, his voice reflecting institutional frustration with subordinates who challenged established procedures. Target identification is confirmed. Prepare for immediate engagement on my command. The family man with the vegetable crate had been joined by 2 additional children who appeared to be helping load produce for transport to market stalls throughout the area. Their interaction displayed natural family dynamics and commercial preparation that seemed completely incompatible with terrorist command structures or weapons storage operations. Jessica realized that proceeding with the elimination mission would constitute mass murder of innocent civilians whose only crime was living in a building that had been misidentified by intelligence analysts. Jessica's combat record included 43 confirmed eliminations of legitimate enemy targets, each engagement authorized through proper channels, and executed according to rules of engagement designed to protect civilian populations while achieving military objectives. She understood the legal and moral distinctions between lawful combatants and protected non-combatants, having spent months learning to identify hostile personnel through behavioral analysis and tactical indicators that separated genuine threats from innocent bystanders. Final engagement authorization. Overwatch 6. Thompson announced through the tactical frequency with mechanical precision that reduced human lives to bureaucratic decisions. Eliminate designated target on my command. 3, 2, 1. Execute immediately. The moment that would define Jessica's military career arrived with the clinical efficiency of institutional authority divorced from ground-level reality. Thompson's order was legally valid, properly authorized through command channels, and backed by intelligence assessments that had been processed according to established procedures. Refusing to comply would constitute insubordination under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, potentially resulting in court-martial proceedings and federal imprisonment. Jessica maintained her shooting position with the rifle's crosshairs centered on the man who appeared to be the designated target, her breathing controlled and her finger resting lightly on the trigger mechanism. Through her precision optics, she could observe his weathered features clearly, marked by years of agricultural labor and bearing the patient expression of someone whose life revolved around growing food for his community, rather than planning attacks against military forces. Negative. Control. I will not engage civilian targets, Jessica transmitted with absolute finality, her voice carrying the moral authority of someone who'd seen enough combat to distinguish between legitimate military objectives and administrative failures that endangered innocent lives. Requesting immediate mission abort and intelligence verification through independent sources. The aftermath of Jessica's refusal to fire had unfolded with the mechanical precision of military justice operating under wartime conditions that prioritized administrative efficiency over individual circumstances. She'd been immediately relieved of duty and subjected to emergency detention pending formal charges that would be processed through court-martial proceedings designed to maintain discipline and order within military ranks operating under combat conditions. The investigation team sent to verify the compound's contents had discovered exactly what Jessica's observations had indicated. A civilian family residence occupied by local merchants whose only connection to insurgent activities existed in classified intelligence reports that had confused their compound with an actual terrorist facility, located 3 kilometers away in a different sector entirely. The intelligence failure had nearly resulted in the massacre of 7 innocent civilians, including 4 children under the age of 12. Institutional mechanisms designed to protect military careers and maintain operational security ensured that evidence of the intelligence failure was classified at levels that prevented its introduction during Jessica's legal proceedings. The photographs and signals intercepts that had supposedly confirmed enemy presence at the target location were sealed under national security protocols that made their accuracy impossible to evaluate through normal judicial processes. Captain Marcus Thompson's testimony during the court-martial had painted Jessica as an unstable soldier whose previous combat successes had created dangerous overconfidence that led to insubordination when faced with difficult orders. His account emphasized her refusal to follow direct commands while minimizing the intelligence discrepancies she'd identified through professional observation techniques that had proven reliable throughout her deployment. Part 3. The corrupt system. The courtroom at Fort Operating Base Apache buzzed with the artificial lighting and recycled air that characterized military legal proceedings conducted in temporary facilities designed for administrative efficiency rather than judicial dignity. Jessica sat in her dress uniform at the defendant's table, the combat ribbons on her chest representing 3 tours of exemplary service that now seemed irrelevant to the charges being read in mechanical legal language that reduced moral courage to violations of military regulations. Major Richard Stevens served as the prosecuting attorney with the dispassionate professionalism of someone whose career advancement depended on maintaining conviction rates rather than pursuing justice in complex cases that challenged institutional narratives. His presentation emphasized Jessica's violation of direct orders while systematically avoiding discussion of the intelligence failures that had triggered her moral stand, creating a legal framework where obedience to authority became more important than protecting civilian lives. The defense attorney assigned to Jessica's case, Captain Jennifer Walsh, possessed neither the security clearance nor the institutional support necessary to challenge the classified intelligence materials that would have vindicated her client's tactical judgment. Walsh's previous legal experience involved straightforward administrative violations and minor disciplinary, leaving her unprepared for the political complexities surrounding a case that questioned the competence of field-grade officers during active combat operations. Military Judge Colonel David Martinez presided over proceedings with the measured authority of someone whose legal career had been built on administrative law rather than combat operations, giving him limited understanding of the split-second decision-making required in precision shooting scenarios. His interpretation of military justice emphasized procedural compliance and institutional stability over individual moral agency, reflecting judicial philosophies that prioritized predictable outcomes over contextual complexity. The witnesses called to testify on Jessica's behalf painted a portrait of exceptional professional competence that contrasted sharply with the official narrative of unstable subordinate. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos, who had served as Jessica's backup sniper on 11 previous missions, provided detailed testimony about her tactical judgment and precision capabilities that had prevented civilian casualties during complex urban operations throughout their deployment. Staff Sergeant Jessica Carter demonstrated the finest combination of technical skill and moral judgment I've encountered in 15 years of infantry operations. Santos testified, consulting mission reports that documented Jessica's contributions to successful operations across multiple sectors. Her tactical awareness and ethical standards consistently exceeded those of personnel with significantly more experience and higher rank classifications. Master Sergeant Robert Torres, a veteran of 6 combat deployments spanning 3 different conflicts, described incidents where Jessica's accurate intelligence and precise engagement techniques had prevented friendly fire casualties, while eliminating genuine enemy threats during operations where split-second decisions carried life and death consequences for entire military units. The character witness statements submitted on Jessica's behalf documented a pattern of exceptional performance under combat conditions, describing tactical contributions that had enhanced mission effectiveness while minimizing collateral damage during counterinsurgency operations. Multiple field commanders praised her judgment and professionalism in terms that exceeded routine military, emphasizing capabilities that should have warranted promotion rather than court-martial proceedings. However, the institutional machinery processing Jessica's case operated according to wartime legal procedures that prioritized rapid disposition of disciplinary matters over comprehensive evaluation of individual circumstances. Her court-martial was completed with established timeframes. Her punishment was documented according to proper protocols, and her reassignment followed standard personnel management practices that emphasized administrative efficiency over talent utilization. Captain Marcus Thompson's career trajectory following the Fallbrook Province incident reflected institutional approval of his leadership philosophy and operational decision-making capabilities. His promotion to major and subsequent assignment to prestigious staff positions at Joint Special Operations Command demonstrated that challenging subordinates who questioned intelligence assessments was viewed favorably by superiors, who valued decisive leadership over complicated moral considerations. The intelligence analyst responsible for providing the target information that had nearly resulted in civilian casualties faced no disciplinary action for their assessment failures. The photograph, signals intercept, and human intelligence report that had triggered the elimination mission were reviewed through internal procedures and found to meet acceptable standards for operational intelligence despite their fundamental inaccuracy regarding target identification and civilian presence. The plea bargain offered to resolve Jessica's case was presented as institutional mercy that recognized her previous exemplary, while maintaining the principle that military discipline required consequences for insubordination regardless of underlying circumstances. Instead of facing potential federal conviction and military prison sentence, she would accept administrative punishment, security clearance suspension, and reassignment to non-combat duties that made no use of her specialized training or combat experience. You're receiving consideration that reflects your service record and the unique circumstances surrounding this incident, Colonel Martinez told Jessica during the final hearing, where her fate would be officially determined. I strongly recommend accepting this resolution and focusing on rebuilding your military career through exemplary performance in whatever assignment you receive next. Jessica's transfer to Fort Morrison had been processed as routine personnel action rather than punitive reassignment, but everyone involved understood the reality of her situation. She would serve out her remaining enlistment obligation in positions that utilized none of her advanced capabilities. while serving as an institutional example of what happened to personnel who questioned orders from superior officers, regardless of the moral validity of their concerns. The network of special operations personnel who had worked alongside Jessica during her preserving ties to, but were powerless to intervene in legal proceedings that had followed proper military channel. Many privately agreed with her tactical assessment and moral stand in Fallbrook province, but military culture discouraged public support for personnel who had been officially disciplined through court-martial proceedings. The broader implications of Jessica's case extended beyond individual punishment to institutional questions about intelligence quality, command accountability. Her prosecution sent clear messages throughout special operations communities about the career consequences of challenging authority, even when that challenge was based on accurate tactical assessment that prevented civilian casualties. Part 4: Survival in Exile. The transition from combat operations to equipment maintenance duty represented more than professional demotion. It constituted psychological exile from the only life Jessica had known since enlisting 8 years earlier. Fort Morrison's equipment storage facility became both sanctuary and prison, a concrete bunker filled with precision instruments that provided daily reminders of capabilities she was forbidden to employ, while serving as connections to the professional identity that administrative punishment had attempted to erase. The daily routine that governed Jessica's existence required arriving 30 minutes before official duty hours to conduct inventory assessments and system diagnostics that ensured training operations could proceed without equipment failures or safety compromises. Her work prevented countless mechanical problems while maintaining readiness standards that supported Fort Morrison's reputation for training, but these contributions were viewed as routine job performance rather than exceptional dedication that exceeded normal expectations. Her assigned duties, Jessica transformed mundane weapons maintenance into advanced studies of ballistics engineering and precision mechanics that would have impressed technical specialists at higher command levels. Where other armorers performed routine cleaning and basic repairs, she conducted comprehensive analyses of barrel harmonics, trigger mechanisms, and optical systems that optimized performance characteristics beyond manufacturer specifications. Her maintenance logs documented component wear patterns with scientific rigor, tracking microscopic changes in mechanical tolerances that predicted maintenance requirements and potential failures before they could compromise training operations. The technical expertise demonstrated through these records exceeded that of personnel with advanced certifications and specialized, but remained invisible to supervisors who viewed equipment maintenance as unskilled labor rather than technical specialization. The better M82 rifles assigned to Fort Morrison's advanced marksmanship program received Jessica's most meticulous attention, their precision-engineered components responding to her care with mechanical sympathy that transcended mere technical knowledge. She understood every aspect of these weapon systems with intimate familiarity that extended from complex recoil mitigation mechanisms to the manufacturing tolerances that determined their legendary accuracy at extreme distances. During off-duty hours, Jessica continued studying precision shooting techniques through military publications and technical literature that she purchased with personal funds. Her growing collection of reference materials included ballistics handbooks, environmental shooting guides, and tactical manuals that covered subjects extending far beyond her current job requirements but essential for maintaining professional competence. The muscle memory essential for precision shooting remained embedded in her nervous system through daily mental rehearsals that preserved neurological pathways despite 18 months of forced inactivity. Standing before a mirror in her quarters each morning, Jessica practiced breathing techniques, trigger control procedures, and shooting position protocols that had made her exceptional among special operations marksmen throughout her combat deployments. Her personal equipment maintained combat-ready condition despite having no authorized opportunities for employment, representing significant financial investment in capabilities that military bureaucracy had declared irrelevant to her current assignment. The rifle case locked in her personal storage contained precision instruments that exceeded military specifications in every measurable category. Equipped with optics and accessories selected through careful research and uncompromising performance standards, Jessica's understanding of environmental factors affecting precision shooting had deepened through months of observation and theoretical study that transformed Fort Morrison's geographical features into advanced ballistics. She could predict wind patterns across various ranges with meteorological accuracy, understanding how terrain characteristics, altitude variations, and atmospheric conditions influence projectile trajectories at different distances and environmental conditions. The shooting positions that Jessica practiced privately had been refined through biomechanical analysis and physiological research about muscle tension, respiratory control, and neurological factors that influence marksmanship accuracy under stress conditions. She had incorporated advanced techniques into personal training regimens that remained invisible to military supervisors but maintained capabilities that exceeded those of active duty personnel with access to institutional training resources. Her ability to estimate range, wind velocity, and target movement patterns. Walking between buildings, Jessica mentally calculated distances to landmarks, estimated environmental conditions, and visualized engagement solutions for hypothetical scenarios that kept tactical awareness active while appearing to be ordinary movement between duty locations. The Advanced Marksmanship Training Center's published schedules allowed Jessica to track training activities and mental health. Her knowledge of their curriculum exceeded that of most instructional personnel, having memorized technical specifications and performance standards for every weapon system employed during various training rotations conducted throughout the academic year. Jessica's expertise in ballistics mathematics had expanded to include advanced computational models that accounted for factors like Coriolis effects, atmospheric density variations, and spin drift characteristics that influence projectile behavior at extreme distances. She could perform these calculations mentally with greater accuracy than most snipers achieved using electronic ballistics computers, but her mathematical capabilities remained hidden beneath routine equipment maintenance responsibilities. The psychological disciplines required for maintaining mental clarity and emotional control under extreme stress had been preserved through meditation practices and visualization exercises that Jessica conducted during limited personal time. She understood that precision shooting excellence required psychological preparation that went beyond mechanical skill, involving mental states that enabled peak performance when lives depended on split-second accuracy.
Under impossible conditions, her familiarity with various ammunition types had deepened through handling thousands of cartridges during inventory management duties that provided opportunities to study manufacturing specifications, performance characteristics, and ballistics properties of different projectile designs. Jessica could identify ammunition specifications through visual inspection, understanding how bullet weights, powder charges, and construction methods affected accuracy and terminal performance. The custom modifications that Jessica had learned to perform on precision rifles represented technical skills that exceeded those of most military armorers, involving adjustments to trigger mechanisms, stock configurations, and barrel harmonics that could transform weapon performance. These techniques had been developed through personal study and experimentation with civilian equipment, creating capabilities that could revolutionize military rifle performance if institutional policies permitted their application. Jessica's knowledge of advanced optical systems had grown through technical literature covering developments in thermal imaging, night vision technology,
and laser range-finding systems employed by elite military units worldwide. Her theoretical understanding of these technologies exceeded the practical experience of many active duty personnel who used them regularly, representing educational investments that prepared her for opportunities that might never arrive. The tactical applications of precision shooting that Jessica had mastered during combat operations remained fresh through mental rehearsals and scenario analysis that covered engagement principles for various operational environments. She could visualize solutions for complex tactical problems, understanding how terrain features, weather conditions, and enemy capabilities influence sniper employment across different mission profiles and geographic regions. Part 5. The Power Player's Commander William Hayes ruled Fort Morrison with the methodical efficiency of someone whose 22-year military career had been built on administrative competence rather than tactical brilliance, his corner office overlooking the training facilities like a monument to institutional authority, divorced from operational reality. Hayes had inherited Jessica's personnel situation from his predecessor and chosen to maintain existing arrangements rather than reopening cases that had been officially resolved through proper channels. His leadership philosophy prioritizing stability over controversial reassessments that might reflect poorly on his command effectiveness. The daily briefings that Hayes received from his staff painted Fort Morrison's operations in statistical terms that emphasized training throughput, equipment readiness, and budget compliance rather than qualitative assessments of instructional effectiveness or personnel utilization efficiency. His understanding of the Advanced Marksmanship Training Center's mission remained limited to performance metrics and graduation rates, preventing him from recognizing how exceptional talent was being systematically wasted through administrative oversights. Hayes's military education had emphasized management principles and bureaucratic navigation rather than tactical operations or specialized technical knowledge, creating leadership perspectives that valued procedural compliance over individual capability recognition. His assignment history included primarily administrative and logistics positions that required coordination skills but minimal understanding of precision shooting, combat operations, or advanced military training methodologies. The command climate that Hayes established at Fort Morrison reflected broader military tendencies to compartmentalize personnel according to current assignments, rather than demonstrated capabilities or potential contributions to organizational effectiveness. His personnel management philosophy assumed that proper administrative processing ensured optimal talent utilization, making individual assessment unnecessary when official records indicated appropriate job placement through established procedures. Sergeant David Mitchell supervised Fort Morrison's Advanced Marksmanship Training Center with the confident authority of someone whose shooting credentials had been earned through peacetime training programs rather than combat operations that tested skills under life-and-death conditions. Mitchell possessed solid technical knowledge and adequate instructional abilities, but lacked the combat experience necessary to distinguish between theoretical competence and practical expertise that separated exceptional marksmen from merely adequate ones. The training programs that Mitchell administered followed standardized curricula designed to produce competent shooters rather than exceptional ones, emphasizing procedural compliance and safety protocols over advanced techniques that required individual adaptation and creative problem-solving. His instructional methods reflected institutional preferences for predictable outcomes rather than maximum performance development that might challenge established training doctrines. Mitchell's interaction with equipment maintenance personnel remained limited to routine coordination about weapon availability and repair schedules, preventing him from observing Jessica's exceptional technical knowledge or understanding how her expertise could enhance training effectiveness. His assumption that equipment maintenance represented unskilled support work made him blind to capabilities that exceeded those of his instructional staff. The student population at Fort Morrison's marksmanship programs included personnel selected through standardized qualification procedures that emphasized adequate performance rather than exceptional potential, creating training environments where mediocrity was acceptable and excellence was neither expected nor particularly valued. This institutional culture reinforced assumptions that current instructional staff represented the pinnacle of available expertise. Captain Lisa Park served as Fort Morrison's legal officer with sufficient experience in military justice to recognize when personnel cases involved unusual circumstances that merited closer examination. But her caseload and institutional pressures discouraged reopening matters that had been officially resolved through proper legal channels. Park's review of Jessica's file had noted discrepancies between her combat record and current assignment, but protocol required compelling evidence of administrative error before challenging previous command decisions. The legal framework governing military personnel management created systems where individual cases could disappear into bureaucratic complexity, making it difficult for reviewing officers to identify patterns of institutional failure or recognize when exceptional talent was being systematically underutilized through administrative oversight. Park understood these limitations but lacked authority to initiate personnel reassessments without direct authorization from senior commanders. Lieutenant Emma Roberts represented one of the few Fort Morrison officers whose combat experience provided perspective necessary for recognizing genuine expertise when encountered in unexpected contexts. Her 2 tours with infantry units in Iraq had taught her to distinguish between theoretical knowledge and practical competence, making her sensitive to signs that Jessica's current assignment might not reflect her actual capabilities or potential contributions. Roberts had observed Jessica's work during routine equipment coordination and noticed technical knowledge that seemed inconsistent with basic maintenance duties, but military protocol prevented her from advocating for personnel outside her direct chain of command. Her informal attempts to learn more about Jessica's background had been discouraged by supervisors who viewed such inquiries as inappropriate interference in personnel matters beyond her responsibility. The informal networks through which military gossip and institutional memory were preserved contained fragments of information about Jessica's combat record and the circumstances surrounding her reassignment. But these stories had been distorted through repeated telling until facts became indistinguishable from speculation. Some versions portrayed her as a combat hero who had been unfairly punished, while others suggested psychological problems that made her unsuitable for operational duties. Colonel Patricia Williams commanded Fort Morrison with the steady competence of someone whose career had demonstrated consistent performance without exceptional achievement or notable controversy. Her leadership style emphasizing procedural correctness and risk avoidance over innovative approaches that might challenge established practices. Williams had been briefed on Jessica's case during her assumption of command but had chosen to maintain existing personnel arrangements rather than reopening settled matters. The institutional pressures that influenced Williams' decision-making included performance evaluations based on training statistics, budget compliance, and avoiding incidents that might generate negative attention from higher headquarters. Her success metrics emphasized stability and efficiency rather than talent optimization or individual development, creating incentive structures that discouraged personnel reassessments that might disrupt established routines. Williams's understanding of precision shooting remained theoretical based on briefings and written reports rather than practical experience that would enable her to assess training effectiveness or recognize when exceptional capabilities were being underutilized through inappropriate assignments. Her reliance on subordinate commanders for technical assessments made her dependent on their judgment regarding personnel utilization and training program effectiveness. The broader command structure above Fort Morrison included officers whose careers had been influenced by Captain Marcus Thompson's network of professional relationships and institutional allies throughout the Special Operations community. Thompson's current assignment at Joint Special Operations Command provided him with influence over personnel assignments and career progression opportunities that extended far beyond his direct authority. The informal communication channels through which Thompson maintained awareness of Jessica's status ensured that any attempts to reassign her to positions requiring advanced marksmanship skills would be quietly discouraged through administrative mechanisms that avoided direct confrontation while achieving desired outcomes. His network understood that acknowledging Jessica's exceptional capabilities would raise uncomfortable questions about the intelligence failures that had led to her court-martial. The political dynamics that governed military personnel management operated through relationships and favor exchanges that bypassed official channels while achieving results that served individual career interests rather than organizational effectiveness. These networks were particularly powerful within specialized communities like Special Operations Forces, where interpersonal relationships often determined assignment opportunities and professional advancement possibilities. Master Sergeant Robert Williams served as Fort Morrison's senior enlisted advisor with sufficient institutional memory and authority to challenge personnel decisions if he chose to exercise that influence. But his position required careful navigation of command relationships that could be damaged by controversial personnel advocacy. Williams remembered Jessica's arrival and had quietly observed her performance, recognizing signs of exceptional capability that seemed inconsistent with her current assignment restrictions. The senior non-commissioned officer network through which Williams maintained awareness of personnel issues had preserved more accurate information about Jessica's background and capabilities than existed in official channels. But military culture discouraged direct challenges to officer decisions without overwhelming evidence of administrative error. Williams understood the political risks involved in advocating for personnel whose cases had been officially resolved through legal proceedings. Part 6: Hidden Excellence. The pre-dawn darkness enveloped Fort Morrison in a silence so complete that Jessica could hear her own heartbeat as she descended into the equipment facility's deepest storage level. Her footsteps muffled by rubber soles that had been chosen specifically for their ability to move without sound across concrete floors. This was her sanctuary, the place where exceptional capability lived in exile, surrounded by instruments of precision that whispered promises of redemption to anyone skilled enough to understand their potential. In the hour before official duty began, Jessica conducted rituals of excellence that transcended mere equipment maintenance, transforming routine tasks into advanced studies of ballistic engineering and mechanical perfection. Her hands moved across rifle components with the reverence of a master craftsman, each adjustment calculated to optimize performance characteristics that most armorers never bothered to consider. The Barrett rifles responded to her touch like fine musical instruments being tuned by a virtuoso, their mechanical harmony achieved through understanding that went beyond technical manuals into the realm of intuitive expertise. The ballistic calculations that Jessica performed mentally during these solitary sessions involved mathematical complexities that would challenge university-trained engineers, incorporating variables like atmospheric density variations, gravitational effects, and rotational dynamics that influenced projectile behavior at extreme distances. She could visualize trajectory paths through three-dimensional space, accounting for environmental factors that changed continuously throughout a bullet's flight time, creating mental models that exceeded the accuracy of computer-generated solutions. Her knowledge of ammunition performance had evolved beyond mere technical specifications to encompass manufacturing tolerances, quality control variations, and batch-to-batch consistency patterns that affected accuracy at ranges where minute differences became magnified into mission-critical disparities. Jessica could predict how specific cartridge lots would perform under various environmental conditions, understanding that precision shooting at extreme distances required ammunition selection as careful as the rifles themselves. The custom modifications that Jessica had developed for optimizing rifle performance represented innovations that could revolutionize military marksmanship if institutional barriers didn't prevent their implementation. Her techniques for adjusting trigger mechanisms achieved consistency levels that exceeded factory specifications, while her barrel harmonics optimization methods eliminated vibration patterns that degraded accuracy. These improvements were invisible to casual observers but would be immediately apparent to anyone capable of precision shooting at distances beyond 800 meters. During lunch breaks, when Fort Morrison's personnel dispersed across the base for meals and rest, Jessica would retreat to a maintenance workshop where she conducted experiments in ballistic optimization that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with military rifle systems. Her work involved microscopic adjustments to component interfaces, stress relief procedures that enhanced barrel life, and accuracy improvements that could extend effective engagement ranges by hundreds of meters. The optical systems available to Fort Morrison's marksmanship programs received Jessica's particular attention, not merely for cleaning and maintenance but for performance optimization that extracted maximum capability from advanced technology. Her understanding of lens coatings, reticle design, and magnification characteristics enabled her to match specific optics with individual rifles, creating combinations that achieved accuracy levels that neither component could deliver independently. Jessica's expertise extended to thermal imaging systems and night vision technology that represented the cutting edge of military surveillance and targeting capabilities. Through technical literature and equipment manuals, she had developed theoretical knowledge of these systems that exceeded the practical experience of many personnel authorized to use them operationally. Her understanding encompassed not only operational procedures but also technical limitations and performance optimization techniques that could enhance effectiveness in specific environmental conditions. The environmental factors that affected precision shooting at Fort Morrison had been studied by Jessica with scientific rigor that transformed local geography into an advanced laboratory for ballistic research. She understood how altitude affected atmospheric density, how mountain terrain created wind patterns, and how temperature variations throughout the day influenced projectile trajectories. This knowledge had been accumulated through observation and analysis rather than official training, representing self-directed education that exceeded institutional curricula. The muscle memory essential for precision shooting had been maintained through isometric exercises and visualization techniques that preserved neurological pathways despite years of forced inactivity. Jessica's body remained calibrated for the physical demands of precision marksmanship, her respiratory control and muscular stability maintained at levels that would allow immediate return to operational effectiveness if opportunities ever arose. Her understanding of combat applications for precision shooting had deepened through study of tactical doctrine and after-action reports from recent conflicts worldwide. Jessica analyzed engagement techniques, team coordination procedures, and mission planning methodologies that represented the current state of military marksmanship doctrine. Her theoretical knowledge remained current despite administrative restrictions that prevented practical application or official recognition of her expertise. The psychological preparation required for precision shooting under stress had been maintained through mental conditioning exercises that Jessica practiced during off-duty hours. She understood that marksmanship excellence required emotional control and mental clarity that transcended mechanical skill, involving psychological states that enabled peak performance when external pressures would degrade normal human capabilities. These mental disciplines had been preserved through deliberate practice that kept her mind as sharp as her technical knowledge. Fort Morrison's ranges provided diverse shooting challenges that Jessica had mentally rehearsed countless times, visualizing engagement scenarios across various distances and environmental conditions. Her familiarity with local ballistic conditions exceeded that of instructional staff who worked there daily, representing knowledge that could enhance training effectiveness if institutional blindness didn't prevent its utilization. The advanced shooting techniques that Jessica had mastered during combat operations remained fresh through constant mental rehearsal and theoretical study that kept tactical knowledge current. She could visualize solutions for complex engagement problems, understanding how terrain features, weather patterns, and operational constraints influenced precision shooting employment across different mission profiles and geographic environments. The equipment innovations that Jessica had developed through personal research represented capabilities that could transform military marksmanship training if administrative barriers didn't prevent their implementation. Her modifications improved accuracy, enhanced reliability, and extended effective ranges beyond manufacturer specifications, creating performance advantages that would be immediately apparent to anyone qualified to evaluate precision shooting systems. Jessica's knowledge of international marksmanship competitions had grown through study of techniques and equipment used by the world's most accomplished precision shooters, incorporating innovations from civilian sporting applications that often exceeded military technology by significant margins. Her understanding of competition shooting provided insights into human performance optimization that could enhance military training methodologies. The tactical communications procedures used by precision shooting teams had been studied by Jessica through doctrine publications and training materials that covered coordination methods, target identification protocols, and safety procedures that enabled snipers to operate effectively within larger military operations. Her knowledge of these procedures remained current despite having no official opportunities to employ them practically. Jessica's expertise in long-range ballistics encompassed extreme distance shooting that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible with current technology. Her calculations could account for factors like Coriolis effects, atmospheric layering, and gravitational variations that influenced projectile behavior at ranges where most shooters considered engagement impossible. This knowledge represented the frontier of precision marksmanship science. The maintenance standards that Jessica applied to equipment under her care exceeded military specifications by margins that prevented malfunctions and enhanced performance reliability. Her attention to detail had eliminated numerous potential safety hazards while improving training effectiveness through equipment that performed consistently at peak capability levels. These contributions remained invisible to commanders who viewed maintenance as routine support activity rather than technical specialization. Her understanding of ammunition manufacturing processes had grown through study of quality control procedures, material specifications, and production techniques that affected cartridge performance. Jessica could identify ammunition characteristics that influenced accuracy, understanding how manufacturing variations created performance differences that became critical factors in precision shooting applications. Part 7: The crisis emerges. The emergency klaxon shattered Fort Morrison's routine training schedule at 0647 hours with an urgency that transformed the base from administrative efficiency into controlled chaos within moments. Jessica paused in her meticulous inspection of a rifle's bolt carrier group as the harsh electronic wailing echoed through the equipment facility's concrete corridors, followed immediately by the authoritative voice of the base communications officer broadcasting over facility-wide intercom systems. All personnel, this base operations with emergency notification. We have a code yellow situation developing. Repeat: code yellow emergency. All emergency response teams report to designated stations immediately. This is not a drill. The announcement carried undertones of controlled urgency that Jessica recognized from her combat deployments, suggesting situations that tested institutional capability, while requiring coordinated responses from multiple specialized units. Code Yellow indicated imminent threat to civilian populations requiring military intervention, typically involving rescue operations that exceeded local emergency service capabilities. Jessica had responded to similar alerts during her overseas assignments, usually preceding complex operations that demanded every aspect of military training and specialized equipment to prevent humanitarian disasters or civilian
casualties. The radio in Sergeant First Class Mike Anderson's office crackled with increasingly detailed transmissions as information about the developing crisis filtered through command channels. Jessica moved closer to the doorway, her combat instincts recognizing the communication patterns that preceded major emergency operations requiring specialized skills and advanced equipment that might not be readily available through conventional channels. Base operations. This is Overwatch Tower 2, came the first tactical update through encrypted frequencies. We have visual confirmation of the situation. Civilian school bus has skidded off Highway 47 approximately 2 miles north of Woodland Creek Bridge. Vehicle is suspended over Eagle Canyon Ravine, held only by guardrail cable systems. Weather conditions deteriorating with high winds and visibility dropping rapidly. Jessica's pulse quickened as she processed the tactical implications of the emergency scenario. Eagle Canyon represented one of Colorado's most treacherous geographic features, a rocky gorge that plunged nearly 800 feet into granite formations that would be instantly fatal for anyone unfortunate enough to fall. The canyon's name reflected its reputation among local emergency services, who considered rescue operations in that area among the most dangerous they could encounter. Tower 2. This is base operations. What's the status of personnel on the bus? Do we have communications with the driver or passenger? Manifest information. The radio transmission carried professional concern mixed with operational urgency that suggested command personnel were already calculating resource requirements for complex rescue operations that might exceed standard emergency protocols. Negative on direct communications. Base operations. Visual observation indicates school bus contains approximately 20 to 25 children, elementary age range based on window observations. Bus driver appears conscious but unable to exit vehicle due to structural damage and precarious positioning. Any significant movement could cause complete cable failure and drop the entire bus into the canyon. Anderson emerged from his office with the grim expression of someone who had just received very bad news through official channels. His weathered face reflected the internal calculations of someone trying to match available resources against impossible operational requirements, recognizing that conventional rescue methods might be inadequate for the geographic and environmental challenges they were facing. "Carter, you need to understand what we're dealing with," Anderson announced, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood that institutional limitations might prevent successful resolution of the crisis. "The school bus is hanging by damaged guardrail cables over an 800-foot drop. Ground-based rescue teams estimate minimum 4 hours to establish rappelling systems and safety lines. Weather forecasts indicate severe storm conditions that will make helicopter operations impossible within the next 90 minutes. Jessica understood the mathematical brutality of the timeline without requiring additional explanation. Mountain weather systems in Colorado could develop with devastating speed, creating wind shear conditions and visibility problems that grounded aircraft while making rope-based rescue operations extremely dangerous for both civilians and emergency personnel. 4 hours of exposure to high winds and unstable positioning would almost certainly result in cable failure and the deaths of 25 children. What about alternative extraction methods or specialized equipment that might accelerate the rescue timeline? Jessica asked, her tactical mind automatically analyzing possible solutions that conventional emergency services might not consider. The Advanced Marksmanship Unit has precision equipment that could potentially provide capabilities not available through standard rescue protocols. Base operations, this is AMU leader, Mitchell's voice transmitted through the tactical frequencies monitoring the emergency response coordination. "We are establishing observation positions at coordinates November 77 Alpha to provide overwatch and communication support for rescue operations. Current weather conditions are marginal but within acceptable parameters for precision observation activities." The irony of the situation struck Jessica with painful clarity. Mitchell's team would be employing long-range observation techniques and precision optical systems that she could have operated with superior effectiveness. But institutional policies prevented her from participating in operations that required the specialized skills she had developed through years of combat experience and advanced training that exceeded anything currently available at Fort Morrison. Anderson continued monitoring radio communications while Jessica listened to the developing picture of a crisis that was rapidly exceeding the capabilities of available rescue resources. Multiple agencies were coordinating response efforts, but the geographic constraints and environmental factors were creating operational challenges that conventional methods couldn't address within the critical time window. AMU leader, this is base operations. We need continuous visual monitoring of the bus positioning and structural stability. Any changes in cable tension or vehicle movement must be reported immediately to coordinate ground rescue team safety. Weather conditions are expected to deteriorate beyond operational limits within 2 hours maximum. Through the facility's small window, Jessica could observe storm clouds building over the mountains with meteorological violence that would make any rescue operation extraordinarily hazardous for both the trapped children and their potential rescuers. The approaching weather system carried the visual characteristics of high-altitude storms that produced extreme wind conditions and near-zero visibility that could ground aircraft while making rope work lethally dangerous. Base operations, this is Mountain Rescue Team Leader, came another transmission painting an increasingly desperate operational picture. Ground approach routes are being hampered by loose rock conditions and terrain instability around the canyon rim. Standard rappelling procedures are complicated by wind factors and cable positioning that puts rescue personnel at extreme risk. We need alternative methods or we're going to lose the entire bus. Anderson looked at Jessica with the expression of someone who understood the cruel mathematics of bureaucracy versus capability. Carter, I know you're thinking about precision delivery systems or specialized techniques that aren't being considered, but there's no way command is going to authorize your participation in this operation. Your personnel file restrictions prevent assignment to any duties requiring independent judgment or advanced technical skills. Jessica understood the regulatory constraints that governed her current assignment.
But she also recognized that 25 children were going to die while qualified personnel were prevented from attempting rescue operations due to administrative policies that prioritized institutional convenience over mission effectiveness. The technical solutions existed, the equipment was available, and the expertise was present, but bureaucratic barriers were preventing their utilization when human lives hung in the balance. Anderson, what if there were ways to provide technical assistance without officially participating in rescue operations? Jessica suggested carefully, recognizing that creative interpretation of regulations might enable contributions without violating explicit restrictions. Specialized consultation about equipment capabilities or ballistic delivery systems that could extend rescue options beyond conventional methods currently being attempted. The AMU team is using standard military optical systems that weren't designed for extreme weather observation under these environmental conditions. Jessica continued, her voice taking on the clinical precision of someone analyzing tactical problems that others couldn't solve. There are equipment modifications and specialized techniques that could extend their effective observation range and improve target acquisition capabilities under adverse weather conditions. Anderson considered Jessica's suggestion with the careful attention of someone who understood both tactical potential and administrative risks involved in unauthorized equipment modifications or procedural variations. Military regulations governing precision equipment were strictly enforced, but emergency situations sometimes required creative interpretations of existing policies that balanced regulatory compliance against mission success requirements. Base operations. This is AMU leader. We're experiencing degraded visual contact with the target vehicle due to environmental conditions and distance factors. Standard observation equipment is approaching its operational limits due to weather interference and atmospheric disturbance. Requesting permission to relocate to alternative positions or employ enhanced observation capabilities. The radio transmissions painted an increasingly desperate picture as multiple rescue teams reached the limits of their conventional capabilities, while 25 children remained suspended over certain death in conditions that were rapidly becoming unsurvivable for extended periods. Jessica understood that standard rescue methods were failing and time was running out for solutions that operated within normal institutional parameters. Anderson, there's another factor that hasn't been considered by the rescue coordination teams, Jessica said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced similar impossible situations and found solutions through technical expertise rather than bureaucratic compliance. The bus positioning and cable configuration might be accessible through precision delivery systems if someone with advanced ballistics knowledge could calculate trajectory parameters accurately under these environmental conditions. Anderson's eyebrows rose as he considered the implications of Jessica's assessment. Precision delivery systems could theoretically transport emergency supplies, communications equipment, or specialized rescue gear to locations that were inaccessible through conventional methods. But such operations required mathematical calculations and technical expertise that exceeded the capabilities of most military personnel currently available for emergency response duties. Carter, are you suggesting that someone could deliver emergency stabilization equipment or rescue supplies directly to the bus using precision shooting techniques that aren't currently being considered by the rescue coordination teams? Anderson asked. Understanding that such capabilities might exist within Fort Morrison's resources even if institutional policies prevented their implementation. I'm suggesting that the physics and ballistics knowledge required for such operations exist within this facility, even if the institutional authority to implement those capabilities doesn't currently exist through normal channels. Jessica replied, her voice carrying absolute confidence built upon years of combat experience and technical mastery that had never been diminished by administrative punishment or bureaucratic interference. All stations, this is base operations. Weather conditions are expected to deteriorate beyond safe operational limits within the next 60 minutes. All rescue teams are advised that extraction window is closing rapidly and alternative methods must be considered immediately if we're going to save those children. Jessica looked at Anderson with the steady gaze of someone who had faced similar impossible situations and found solutions through competence rather than compliance with regulations that prioritized administrative convenience over mission success. The 25 children suspended over Eagle Canyon were going to die unless someone was willing to exceed their assigned duties and demonstrate capabilities that had been bureaucratically erased but never actually eliminated through institutional indifference. "Anderson, I can save those children," Jessica said with quiet finality, her words carrying the moral authority of someone who understood that exceptional circumstances required exceptional responses regardless of administrative consequences. "But I'm going to need equipment access and operational authority that goes far beyond normal maintenance responsibilities and regulatory compliance requirements." Part 8. System failure. The weather deterioration accelerated with frightening speed as storm systems converged over Eagle Canyon, transforming what had been marginal rescue conditions into a meteorological nightmare that defeated one emergency response capability after another. Jessica monitored the radio traffic with growing frustration as she listened to professional rescue teams reach the limits of their equipment and training while 25 children remained suspended over certain death in a school bus that was slowly sliding toward catastrophic failure. "Base operations, this is Rescue Helicopter Alpha," came a transmission that carried professional disappointment mixed with operational reality. "Wind shear conditions at the canyon location are exceeding safe flight parameters for helicopter operations. Gusts are registering 45 to 50 knots with severe downdrafts that make approach impossible. We're being forced to abort insertion attempts until weather conditions improve significantly." The helicopter crew's report eliminated the most promising rescue option available to emergency coordinators, leaving only ground-based approaches that required hours of preparation time that the deteriorating situation couldn't provide. Jessica understood that rotary wing aircraft represented the fastest method for reaching the stranded bus, but mountain weather conditions could create air currents that made flying suicidal for even the most experienced pilots. "Mountain Rescue Team Leader, this is base operations. What's the current status of ground approach preparations and estimated timeline for reaching the target vehicle? We're running out of options and need realistic assessment of remaining rescue capabilities under current environmental conditions." "Base operations, ground conditions are deteriorating beyond acceptable risk parameters for personnel safety," came the response that painted a picture of mounting desperation among professional rescuers who were being defeated by geography and weather. "Loose rock conditions around the canyon rim are creating rockfall hazards that endanger rappelling operations. High winds are making rope work extremely dangerous, and we're estimating minimum 6 hours to establish secure anchor points and safety systems." Anderson continued coordinating with various emergency agencies while Jessica listened to reports that confirmed her tactical assessment of the situation. Conventional rescue methods were being systematically defeated by environmental factors that created perfect storms of operational challenges, leaving children suspended in a vehicle that was slowly failing while professional rescuers watched helplessly from safe distances. "AMU Leader, this is base operations. We need continuous updates on bus positioning and structural condition. Any changes in vehicle stability or cable tension could affect rescue team safety planning. What's your current observation capability under these weather conditions?" "Base operations, this is AMU Leader. We're having significant difficulty maintaining visual contact with the target vehicle due to weather interference and optical limitations." Mitchell reported with obvious frustration at his unit's inability to provide meaningful support during the crisis. "Standard military scopes aren't performing adequately under these atmospheric conditions, and our observation positions are being compromised by wind and visibility problems." Jessica felt her chest tighten with professional anger at the institutional blindness that prevented utilization of capabilities that could address problems that were defeating supposedly elite personnel. Mitchell's team was struggling with equipment limitations and technical challenges that she could have solved, but administrative policies kept her buried in equipment storage while children died from bureaucratic incompetence. The radio crackled with another update that emphasized the closing window for successful intervention. "All stations, this is base operations. Engineering assessment indicates the guardrail cable system is showing signs of progressive failure under wind loading and vehicle weight. Estimated time to catastrophic failure is 60 to 90 minutes maximum. All rescue elements must accelerate operations immediately or we will lose all 25 children." Anderson stared at Jessica with the expression of someone who finally understood that institutional policies were about to cause the deaths of innocent children, while the person most qualified to save them remained legally prevented from attempting rescue operations. His weathered face reflected internal struggle between military protocol and human conscience that defined moments when good soldiers had to choose between following orders and doing what was morally necessary. "Carter, I'm about to make a decision that could end both our careers," Anderson announced, his voice carrying the weight of someone crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. "Those children are going to die if we follow regulations while they fall into that canyon, because nobody with authority is willing to admit that our best qualified person has been buried by administrative politics." Jessica felt electricity surge through her nervous system as Anderson moved toward the secure storage area where Fort Morrison's most advanced precision equipment was maintained. Inside the climate-controlled environment, specialized rifles and optical systems waited in pristine condition, including Barrett M82 systems equipped with advanced ballistics computers and thermal imaging capabilities that exceeded anything currently deployed with the advanced marksmanship unit. "What exactly are you proposing?" Anderson asked, pulling out rifle cases that contained some of the most accurate weapon systems available to military personnel. "And don't give me theoretical discussions about ballistics mathematics. I need to know exactly what you think you can accomplish that trained rescue teams with specialized equipment and years of experience cannot achieve under these conditions." Jessica's hands moved over the rifle components with fluid familiarity that had been preserved through years of mental practice and technical maintenance. Every control surface and adjustment mechanism exactly where her muscle memory expected to find them, despite regulations that had prevented her from handling such equipment since her reassignment. The Barrett M82 felt like an extension of her nervous system, its weight and balance characteristics triggering responses that transcended conscious thought. "The children are positioned approximately 1,000 meters from the nearest accessible high ground at an elevation that puts them roughly 400 meters below potential shooting positions," Jessica began, her voice taking on the clinical precision of someone calculating solutions to complex tactical problems. "Standard rescue protocols assume ground-based or aerial approaches, but there's an alternative delivery method that nobody's considering because it requires capabilities that don't officially exist within current organizational structures." Anderson listened intently as Jessica explained her analysis of terrain features, wind patterns, and ballistic trajectories that could enable precision delivery of emergency equipment directly to the stranded bus. Her calculations incorporated environmental factors that exceeded the computational capabilities of most military personnel, drawing upon years of combat experience and advanced study of ballistics principles that had been maintained through private dedication. "I can deliver stabilization equipment and emergency supplies directly to that bus using precision delivery techniques." Jessica continued, removing the rifle's bolt and inspecting the chamber with practiced efficiency that impressed Anderson despite his years of weapons experience. "The ballistics computer on this system can calculate trajectory parameters for current environmental conditions, but someone needs to make the delivery with accuracy that allows zero margin for error." The implications of Jessica's proposal struck Anderson with the force of tactical revelation. Instead of attempting dangerous ground-based rescue operations that were being defeated by weather and terrain, they could deliver critical equipment that would stabilize the bus and enable more conventional extraction methods to succeed once environmental conditions improved sufficiently for safe rescue operations. "Carter, are you telling me you can shoot emergency equipment to children trapped in a school bus suspended over an 800-foot canyon in weather conditions that are defeating our most experienced rescue specialists with access to specialized equipment and unlimited resources?" Anderson asked, needing absolute confirmation before authorizing actions that violated multiple military regulations. "I'm telling you I can hit a target the size of a car door at that distance in these environmental conditions, and I can do it with projectiles designed to deploy emergency supplies on impact rather than cause structural damage," Jessica replied, her voice carrying absolute confidence built upon years of combat experience and technical mastery that had never been eliminated by administrative punishment or institutional indifference. Anderson understood that Jessica's proposal represented their best chance of keeping the children alive until weather conditions improved enough for conventional rescue operations to succeed. The alternative was accepting that 25 children would die while qualified personnel were prevented from attempting rescue operations due to bureaucratic restrictions that prioritized regulatory compliance over mission success and human life. "What kind of specialized ammunition are you talking about?" Anderson asked, recognizing that standard military projectiles weren't designed for emergency supply delivery to civilian targets. The ammunition storage facility contained various specialized rounds developed for different military applications, but emergency rescue operations required capabilities that might not exist in standard inventory systems. Jessica moved to another storage cabinet that contained experimental ammunition types developed for special operations forces requiring non-standard capabilities. Among the various specialized rounds were projectiles designed for delivery applications, including systems that could transport equipment packages across significant distances with pinpoint accuracy that exceeded conventional delivery methods. These are prototype rounds developed for special operations units that need to deliver communications equipment or emergency supplies to personnel in locations inaccessible through conventional methods, Jessica explained. Examining the specialized ammunition with technical expertise that impressed Anderson despite his extensive experience with military weapons systems. The projectile contains a deployable payload section that opens on impact, dispersing contents across a predetermined pattern without causing structural damage to target surfaces. The radio crackled with another transmission that emphasized the deteriorating situation at Eagle Canyon. "Base operations, this is Mountain Rescue Team Leader. We're observing increasing instability in the cable support system. High winds are creating harmonic vibration that's weakening attachment points. Current conditions prevent safe approach and we're estimating complete system failure within 45 minutes maximum." Anderson made his decision with decisive clarity that reflected years of military service where mission success required accepting personal risk when institutional procedures failed to address operational requirements. "Carter, I'm giving you unofficial authorization to attempt emergency supply delivery using whatever specialized equipment and techniques you consider necessary. This conversation never happened, and if anyone asks, you were conducting routine ballistics testing procedures." Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.